This is Andrea Ormsby, and I help moms get clear on what their next step should be so that they can mother from a place of strength and courage instead of from a place of fear. Those of you who have been following me, you know today is a hot topic, and I did want to talk about it because it is something that we as moms deal with day in and day out, and how we view how we parent our children or how we approach parenting our children. And I do think it's important for us to discuss this idea of being a helicopter parent. If you read the title, that is part of my title. And specifically, I know I've spoken to a lot of clients who could be viewed as a helicopter parent or view themselves as a helicopter parent, and maybe they agree with it or they don't agree with it. But I do think, again, that it's important to discuss what this really means and how this can affect you as a parent, as a mom, and specifically how you are intentionally investing in the lives of your children. So I have a 9-year-old and twin 7-year-olds, and I am extremely involved in their lives. I'm very involved in their school. I'm very involved in their home time. Homework is a daily chore that we do all together, and I'm not ashamed of that. I appreciate being involved. In fact, I have a teacher friend who told me once that I am one of the rare parents who are actually involved in my children's education. And so their teachers know that I'm very involved and I'm very on it. If there's any questions or concerns with their schoolwork, I'm there. I'm asking the questions. But I do not want to come across or even intentionally put forth an effort towards being too controlling or too hovering over my children, which is very much what a helicopter parent by definition would be. So I want to read you what that definition is according to Wikipedia. And this would describe, a helicopter parent describes a parent who pays extremely close attention to their child or children's experiences and problems, particularly at educational institutions. So even in reading that definition, it doesn't really sound like a bad thing. But the difference of a helicopter parent versus a parent who is allowing their children to experience on their own and help to guide them, as I would put it, is that parent who, for example, might be showing up at their adult child's workplace to complain to their boss about how they were treated. Or perhaps that other parent who may call their child's professor, if they're in college or university, to complain about some grades that their child might be receiving. That is a bit much. When you have an adult child who is making choices for themselves or should be making choices for themselves, and this is where we have that fine line. Where do we as moms understand how our children are capable or able to now start making choices for themselves? And I know it can be confusing. I know, especially as moms, we've raised these children up from when they were younger, and it's hard to kind of step back and watch our children make those choices for themselves, whether good choices or even bad choices, because really at the end of the day, they need to learn for themselves. So if you followed me anytime, you know that I have a 9-year-old and I have twin 7-year-olds. And so I've brushed their teeth for most of their young lives. And so those of you moms who are brushing their teeth, I gotcha. I know the struggle, especially the daily struggle, the morning and the evening struggle in our house, because we do brush our teeth twice a day. And so recently I decided to allow them to start brushing their teeth on their own. When I say recently, within the last year or so. And I had a process in place where I would allow them to brush their teeth for one of those 2 times a day, and I would brush them for the second time in the day. And so I wanted to allow them that opportunity to practice doing it both morning and evening. So yes, I would remind them, especially when I didn't see them going to brush their teeth, and I would notice some mornings I would put the toothpaste right on the toothbrush so I could actually kind of gauge who's actually going on their own to brush their teeth or who's not. I also provide the mouthwash to see who's going and who's not. And this is really my attempt in actually monitoring their own self-initiative to doing what they know is something that they're supposed to do. So needless to say, we experienced some brown teeth. We experienced some bad breath. We have not lost any teeth. My children have never had cavities by God's grace. They have never had any cavities. And so to this day, we do not have any cavities. But I give that experience to show you that it is a learning process, Mom. But it is something that your children need to learn in terms of that autonomy and that ability to make those choices for themselves. And sometimes they need to learn the effects or the consequences of making poor choices. I know that is probably one of the hardest things for me as a mom, to watch my children make poor choices, to know that they are making those poor choices, and to still have them make that choice so that they can then see the events of their consequences play out. I can warn them all that I want, and I can tell them all that I want, but as long as I keep doing this for them, then they will essentially learn that mommy's always going to be there. Mommy's always going to do that for me. And that's not how I want to raise my adult. I want to raise them to learn to think for themselves and to do things for themselves. And sometimes that means that I have to watch them make poor choices and then them reap the consequences of those poor choices. And so there is a book that I read, and unfortunately I'm not going to remember it right now, but it talks similarly about the idea of, you know, that parent who is always telling their child to put on that jacket because it's cold outside. And you have to look at the age of your child and the maturity of that child. When you have a 3-year-old who wants to run outside in the snow without a jacket, without a shirt, essentially wearing their underwear or the pajamas on, depending on your parenting style, that might be okay. In my house, that would not be okay. But at the same time, if I have a 13-year-old who wants to run outside in their underwear or their pajamas on in the middle of the winter in, 6 feet of snow, and that's okay with them, that is for me a problem, because I feel that that child should know to make better decisions for themselves that would protect their health, that would protect their body, and to know that they should be doing those choices, making those choices that are going to protect them. And if at that age they are unable to make those choices for themselves, or they are relying on me as their mother to make those choices for themselves, that's where I'm now seeing that I have been doing too much in not allowing my children to become and build up their independent muscle. And that's where I would show or encourage you, Mom, to think about, how am I helping my child to build that independent muscle on their own? Again, they're not going to know to do things right from the get-go because they're children. That's what we're here for, to help teach and train them in the way that they should go. However, there is gonna come a time where you need to, as a mom, as a dad, to essentially allow your children to start making those choices for themselves so that they can learn to reap those consequences, good or bad, for the choices that they make. Too often, my husband is in a high school every single day, and it is amazing to me as a mom to see how those high school students are making such poor choices for themselves. Despite the warnings, despite the advice, they are now becoming closer to adult age, and they know it because they know how old they are and what they do, and they're ready to tell you in a heartbeat. However, they're still making those poor choices for themselves. And it's really disheartening as a mother to watch and hear some of these stories as he watches this happen in the high schools, and to think, how am I helping my children so that they can in turn make better choices for themselves when they are faced with different decisions or even difficult decisions? We often think of that peer pressure and, not wanting them to choose to smoke or to take street narcotics or anything like that. But oftentimes it can be in the simple day-to-day conversations with their friends and having morals and value conversations, or even just talking about sex. I scoped on that on Periscope recently, that my child, my 9-year-old, recently had a conversation with some of his peers about what sex is. And this was not a conversation that was spurned because of some school movie or project that they were teaching them in class. It was literally just a question that spurned because the peers were talking. And if it wasn't for the relationship that I have developed with my child, I would never have even known that that conversation happened. And so I'm very thankful that, as I write in my book, Twin Mom Method, Being Honest with Your Children, I'm specific about being intentional and building that honest trust relationship with my children so that they feel safe to come to me and that they can help basically come to me to help their understanding of the world and how they see it. And so in the same way, as we are mothering our children, we don't want to create this dependent child or this child that essentially doesn't learn to feel that you trust them as a parent. If you're always making those decisions or calling the shots for them, even as they get older, then essentially they will learn that you don't really trust them to make those decisions, or you don't believe they're capable of even making those decisions for themselves. And essentially that can pour into what they think of themselves. Maybe I am not capable of making that decision for myself, or maybe I'm not someone that can be trusted to make that kind of decision. And so I really want to encourage you, Mom, to kind of think of this as you're mothering your children and think of how you're approaching mothering them. I know that we want to be involved. And if you're like me, I'm very involved in all three of my children's lives. My 9-year-old, my twin 7-year-old, their school knows me by first name. The other children in their class know me by first name. I am very involved, and I am very thankful that I can be so involved in their lives. My children also know that I care very much about them and what happens to them, and I'm very involved in how they see their world and how they understand their world. And so we have some very open and honest conversations when we talk. But I still do need them to learn how to make those decisions for themselves, and I strongly encourage them to make those decisions for themselves. So as I was reading in some of these books about helicopter parents, the difference of making the bed for that 3-year-old because they just don't know how to make a bed at that age, that's not being a helicopter parent. However, when you are busy still making that bed for that 13-year-old or that 16-year-old or whatever age-year-old that is still living at home, that can be a problem that you are not allowing your child. Oh, hey, Rochelle, good to see you on Periscope. You are not helping that child to build that responsibility muscle and take responsibility for keeping their room maintained, or whatever area of life that might be that you are not allowing that opportunity for your child to learn. And so one of the points that I really want to bring up, that it's important to not lose perspective on what your children need. And as I've talked about, yes, as you mentioned, enabling, Rochelle, that's very important to think about not enabling your child to continue to be dependent on you as a mom. And I know it's hard for me to think about the idea that your child might not need you one day or may not be around as much as they are one day. And some of you, especially if you've got those little ones and you're losing your sleep, you can't wait for that day when they don't need you as much. I completely get it. But I definitely want to speak to you, Mom, that if you really are stepping in the areas of your child's life where they really should be exercising that step out function for themselves and exercising that muscle of doing something for themselves, you need to allow them that space to learn that for themselves. If there is the best place for them to learn that muscle for themselves, it would be in your home, so that they can make a mistake and that you can help them to grow and know how to bounce back from making that mistake. Because how much better it is to make that mistake while at home, as opposed to being an adult and living on their own, or being in the workplace and not knowing how to handle certain situations because you've always handled it for them. So that definitely is important. And I put in quotes that mistake because it also is important to teach your children that mistakes aren't bad. Everyone makes mistakes. And some of us, even as you mom, maybe you have this ingrained in your head based on how you grew up or how you were raised, that making a mistake was bad or unacceptable or just the wrong thing to do. And I really want to encourage you, Mom, that is so not true. And it's so much more empowering to teach your child that they are going to make mistakes. What we need to do is, by learning from those mistakes, how we can alter our choices, how we can make changes to how we are approaching life or that decision or whatever that area was. So as you're making mistakes, you're learning, oh, that didn't work. Now I need to do something differently, or I need to approach differently, or essentially not keep banging my head against the wall wondering why is my head hurt, but to do a different action to get a different result. But that's part of them growing and them learning, and also in making those mistakes on their own so that they can see the consequences and then alter their behavior accordingly. And some of us, maybe it's your mom, might have some hard-headed children. I've got a couple myself, so I get it, and I know it's hard. That tough love is just plain hard. But trust me when I tell you, being that helicopter parent, trying to shield them and hover over them so that nothing harms them and really just try to protect them from the rest of the world, it's just not real. It's not reality, and it's not really helpful for your child or yourself. Just think of how much you carry on your head trying to make this world perfect for your child, or at least as easy as possible. And it's just not the reality of life. Your children need to learn what this life really is and how they are to live and feel confident living how God created them as to be in this life, and how that purpose will show itself if they follow that path that God has for them, and you being right there to support them as they learn their way and you help them to find their way. It's just the same as us moms. You know what it is to try and find your way and to get clear on what that next step should be. And sometimes it's hard. And sometimes we do have to make mistakes or come across challenges that we have to figure out, but we still need to figure it out. Just in that same way, we need to teach our children how to come across those challenges and learn how to process them so that they too can figure them out on their own, because they're going to come across challenges and problems that you're not going to be able to help them with, whether because you don't know how to handle it or you're not there to handle it for them. And it's so key and so important for them to learn what they need to do next, instead of just focusing on that problem, but they can instead focus on brainstorming their solution. And then that also helps them in all areas of their life, whether it be their career or in their relationships with their partner or spouse, with their own children, even their relationship with you, mom. Think of how many times your child comes to you and say, Mom, my sibling, if you have multiple children, Mom, my sibling did this. And what exactly do you want me to do? And that is exactly how I even approach my own children, because there's always something that the sibling is doing. And I know you remember, Mom, doing something. If you had a sibling, you know that you did something to get on their nerves or just get under their skin a little bit, or just because it's never fair. There's never fairness. I know. But it still doesn't change the fact that they still need to know how to work through their problems and problem solve. And I can't help them do that effectively if I'm busy hovering and not allowing them to grow and find their space for themselves. And so really focus on that perspective of what exactly they need to become the adult that they need to be, that they were created to be by God himself. And you step back and let God do what he does best in allowing him to protect your child and nurture your child and help God to really work into your child's life, as opposed to you trying to play that God role. I know we do it a lot, Mom, subconsciously or not. I know we try to step in and play that God role, and it's just not good for us or for our children, because it does not help them. They need to go through some difficult times so they can learn how to persevere and how to build their character, just like James tells us. It's the same Bible for us as it is for them, but we have to allow that space for them to go through those trials so that they can learn how to handle future. So when real big trials come up, they will know how to handle that and how to overcome them and process through them with God's help. So failure and challenges actually teach kids new skills. And more importantly, they teach children how they can handle their failures and their challenges. That is the second point that I really want to point out to you today, because it's so often as moms, we're nurturers, we protect, mother hen. If you've read my book, or if you're not familiar, get the book. Trust me when I tell you, having those honest conversations when we're dealing with bullying, when we're dealing with our bodies and getting comfortable with that, and just even with death, and just so many different conversations that our children have to deal with, those are challenges that they're going to have to learn how to process for themselves. And if you think for yourself, Mom, how do you process those challenges for yourself when you're faced with it? Well, how you handle it is really directly related to how you learned how to handle it. And maybe you didn't learn how to handle it successfully, or maybe you did. If you're blessed to know how to handle those challenges, then you know the best thing to do is to process through it. Or if you can't find a way around it, if it's something that you're trying to go around, you can't find a way under it or over it, guess what? You got to go through it. But you have to deal with it, not shelve it or pass it along to someone else like you, Mom, to handle for it. You have to actually figure out how to handle it yourself and how you're going to handle it going forward. And this is what we need to allow our children to learn for themselves and not try to handle it for them. So definitely a takeaway I really want to hone in for you is that sometimes our children will need to struggle. They're going to get disappointed. They're going to get hurt. But they're going to need to learn to work through those failures, which means that they may fail and we might have to watch them fail. And that might be hard for you to think through, or maybe you've been watching your child fail and you don't know, maybe you should jump in now, or maybe you have that practice of jumping in and saving them because you can't stand to see your child drown. I get it. I understand. But I definitely want to encourage you that if you've been jumping in a lot and you know it, and you really want to help build that exercise muscle, that responsibility muscle, that trust muscle, that strength and courage muscle in your child, then we're going to need to step back and watch them. And that can be hard. And I really want to reach out to you that if this is what you're going through right now, or you're wondering, how am I going to go through that when that happens? And you don't know who to talk to about that. Maybe you have a lot of hovering parents around you. Maybe your circle of friends are all hovering parents, so you're just following the flow, but you're realizing this is not really working, and this is not how you really want to basically pour into your children, and you want to do differently. You realize your child needs more. Maybe your child's personality needs to stretch a bit more, but you're not seeing any examples of that, whether in your mom groups or even in your family. I understand. And I really want to reach out to you and encourage you to reach out to me. In my title, you'll see that there is a link, bit.ly/Courage Coach Form. bit.ly/Courage Coach Form. bit.ly/Courage Coach Form, all one word. If you click on that link, you'll be able to sign up for a strategy session with me. It'll go through some questions to help me understand where you're at right now and what you're really struggling with getting clarity on. And I would love to meet with you and discuss how I can help you through these kind of challenges of mothering. Because when we approach our challenges from that scarce place, from that fearful place, then we cannot stand strong for our children. And if you think about it for yourself, if you have a spouse or significant other, or even if you have some guardians that you had along the way, friends or families, and you went through a tough situation, knowing you had that person standing strong beside you regardless of what was going to happen, I know for me, it's made me stronger. And I know for you, it would make you stronger to know you had somebody standing there right beside you without that judgment, just speaking that truth in love to you, and knowing that no matter what happens, you're still going to be accepted. You're still going to be that powerful, strong mom, and you're learning as you go along. And having that person beside you to stand and hold your hand really, really blesses you and really helps you to mother strong. And in that same way, you want to model that for your children so that when they go through those difficult times, whether it be at school or with their different organizations that they may be a part of or activities they may be involved in, knowing that they've got that mom or their dad, if around, to just really stand by them and cheer them on, even when they're not making any of the goals or they're not hitting any of the balls. They still got that cheerleader right there in their corner. They know that they can always have somewhere safe to go. And that is what I provide for my clients, for my moms, because we often don't have that safe place to go to as moms. Everyone hovers around the children and protects them, and that's what we want. That's what we want to show them, and that support. But that's exactly what we also need as moms. We need that support. We need that strength circles around us so that we can do what we need to do and fill our space confidently, and we can mother from that place of strength and not from a place of fear. So I really hope and pray that this has blessed you. And I know we all know moms who could be blessed by this, who really need to hear this message of encouragement. And so I encourage you, if you're on Periscope, share this scope with them. And if you're on Facebook, share this video with them. Care for that mom by sharing this with them. You might know even fathers who would be blessed by hearing this from them. I look forward to watching the replay. Oh, thank you so much, Rochelle. I really hope and pray that you do, and it blesses you, and it continues to bless other people, because more of us need to share this accountability and this confidence and this strength with each other, and stop just picking at each other's character and focusing too much on this Facebook page. Blessings to you as well, Rochelle. And focusing on the Facebook or the Instagram or whatever it is, this, magic picture of how perfect life is, and just ignoring that that's really not how life really is. Life is tough. Life has got challenges, and we need to go through them and not try to avoid or run away from them. But we also need to help our children learn how to do that, and we need to allow them the opportunity while they're in our safe place to exercise that practice for themselves. And so share this scope with them. If you're on Facebook, you can share it via Twitter, Facebook, or whatever it is, whatever is easiest for you. And make sure that you click on those notifications if you are on Periscope. And also on Facebook, you can follow my page so that you can get notification on when I am on live again. And that way you will be notified of when you can come on live. And I'd love to hear any questions that you have. If you have any situations that you're going through, if they're personal situations, I would definitely recommend that you click on my link. Again, it's bit.ly/courage coach form, so that we can talk about maybe some specific situations that you might be dealing with your child or children. But I really want to come alongside you as a mom who cares for you and wants to support you and wants to help you reach those goals that you have intentionally for your children, so that you can mother successfully from that strong and courageous place that God has intended for you.